Thank you, Kathryn, for joining me today.
My pleasure.
And I'm glad everybody on your end is doing well.
Thank you.
So to start this, why don't we start with the basics to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about how you got into this, how you started, and we'll go from there.
Okay, fun. I was a young actress and I was not, aspiring to films at that time. It was just growing up in the theater world and having it be a wonderful focus for me, a creative focus from a young child through part of college. And then I moved over I just love the directing end of things. It was so much fun to work with actors, and I started to understand what the entire story significance was when I started to direct. So that became the passion. After I got a directing degree in theater, I went into television production because that was the industry that was popping in New Mexico.
Yeah. Where did you get your degree?
I got my degree at the University of New Mexico, BA in directing. Yeah, we had a lot of TV commercial production and like really cool, fun, interactive video games. Yeah, and I cut my teeth on that. I did everything. I did makeup, I did wardrobe, I did art direction, I did production coordinating, and I moved into the producing end of things. I became a law producer. And I did get the opportunity to work with a lot of unbelievable people in the business, people who, travel between the TV commercial world and the film world, like Alan Davia and Bob Eggers and all kinds of amazing, amazing people. And I watched and I learned. And the more I did, the more I realized that the area that I loved the most and that felt the best fit for me was the casting.
Right.
I started to do some casting for those kinds of projects, and then I just weaned myself out of the producing into the casting, and I'm really glad I did because I'm not type A enough to be a producer.
Right. So you just started at casting director. You didn't work for a casting director and cut your teeth that way. You basically just jumped full in.
I jumped full in, and I did background first because that was what was available without, the experience level of working with actors in speaking roles. So the background stuff was, again, a great education. All of it was a great education because it gave me so much information about what it's like to work with a collaborative team and to prioritize. And I think that's a huge part of our business.
I know you work on film and I know you work on television. Do you have a preference, or do you just enjoy the whole thing?
I enjoy the whole thing. And I think, like any experience, you hope that you're going to get a great team to work with, and you never know. A team that trusts you, that allows you to have some creative input. But, we all know that it varies from project to project. So I have no preference. I love every single piece of working with a brand new director up to experienced teams on television with network.
Great. And how do you get your jobs? What is the process for you to be chosen or to pursue a job?
Most of the time it is by reference. It's by, either you've had a relationship with somebody on the team, in the producing team, the directing team, whatever, in the past. Sometimes it's the casting director out of LA or New York that you've worked with on a prior project. And then sometimes it's we're just calling everybody in and seeing who feels like the right person. So it's various avenues, but for the most part, I would say it's your reputation.
Right. So do you ever hear rumors of a project that's coming to New Mexico and you reach out to, it's something that interests you, and so you reach out to the
Absolutely. Studio? Yeah, we all try to stay in touch through various online publications and things, anything from you know, the group of people who might be coming in first, like location scouts and stuff like that, the stunt people, anything, any publication we can find that actually gives us some information about what's upcoming in New Mexico. That would be something I would definitely pursue right away. Send out my resume, say I want to work with you guys. I'm available to talk, Skype, whatever.
Great.
Yeah.
So now that you have the job, and
yay, thank you. That was easy.
I gift it to you. Once you get the breakdowns and the list of characters you have to cast, how do you decide who comes in for specific roles?
It's interesting, Bob, because every time I read a script, I immediately start clicking to people in our market that I know I want to invite in. It's like, oh, that's a Bob Jesser role for sure. You know, it's like you just have these like really tangible feelings that this certain people
right.
Are going to be right for the role. So of course you're going to put them on the list first because that's your intuition telling you that's, you know, that's my guy. But I also, you know, there are a lot of considerations. You know, we're working in a union market, so I really need to look at who's SAG currently and make sure, you know, that I give those people opportunity because they've worked hard to get to that place.
Absolutely.
They've proven themselves. They have the representation, they have the on-set experience, so I'm going to give them some level of preference when I'm looking through the submissions. And I always have, like, I guess what I would call maybe my wild card choices for each film. I'll go back and either, you know, through my online stuff or whatever else and think, okay, you know, who would be really interesting in this role would be this person that I saw when I went to Taos, you know, and did a class or whatever else, you know, like just somebody unusual, somebody that's a fresh face, somebody that's got like a different kind of energy. I have to keep it fresh for myself too.
The atypical person.
Yeah, the atypical person, exactly. And I will invite them in. Now, I will be probably scrutinizing anyone who's new to the business and that I haven't had on set a little more thoroughly than I would my actors that I have had on set, because I have to vet them. I have to know that they're going to be professional. I have to know that they're going to not get on set and after waiting for 10 hours forget their lines. I just have to know that they are going to bring their A game. So
yeah, and I think something that we tend to forget is that every step is a vouching for a person. When the agent submits you to the casting director, they're vouching for their actor. When the casting director submits to the producers, they're vouching for that actor. So it's all, you know, it's all relationships and reputation.
Exactly. That's so well put.
Yeah. And when you do call people in, I kind of already know the answer, but I'd rather hear it from you. Is there a typical amount of people you see for a role?
It is so varying. It's like crazy. I mean, I may say 3 people for a role and it's like, we've got it. I just know these 3 people and they're up on the site and the director's like, that's it. And then there are other roles where I'm trying to think the most I've ever seen for a role was almost 50, which is a lot of actors. They just kept searching and searching. Nope, that's not right. We're going to go in this direction now. Sometimes they would change completely, like they would just alter the whole landscape of what that person is that they're looking for. But I would say anywhere from 3 to 25, and most of the time I'm going to see a minimum of 10.
Right, because it gives you options.
Yeah, I have to have options, and you know, we may switch. Some of these actors are versatile enough that they could switch to other roles. So I want to, you know, I want to be able to start looking at it like a puzzle and fitting the pieces together.
Great. In terms of when you get the breakdown, how much I don't know if it's how much do you have or how much are you willing to do, but how much flexibility do you have? Like if it says, whatever, white male doctor in his 30s, do you trust? I'm sure you trust your instinct. Do you ever say, well, maybe I'll bring in a Hispanic woman the same age range because she just feels right for it?
Absolutely. And that's sometimes that, or most of the time, I would say that's in the first conversation with the director, because I'm going to be looking at the breakdown and saying, okay, this cast looks too Anglo, and I just can't, this is too white. So I need to have diversity. So the first questions out of my mouth will be, how do you feel about me seeing women for this particular role? How do you feel about ethnic diversity? Almost always, it's yes, yes, yes. I mean, it's unusual, but in the past year, I've had two shows that have had no Anglos.
Yeah.
If you can believe that. It's been all ethnic diversity. So that's an opportunity. We'll say, well, how about somebody who's Anglo for this role?
When an actor comes in, how do you feel about them holding their sides?
No problem. I mean, I absolutely have no problem. I always tell them, no, this is sort of the dichotomy. I want them to be prepared. I want them to literally be off book, but you can hold your sides.
Absolutely.
I want you to feel so prepared that you can be relaxed and play and just, loosen up. But holding sides is great. In callbacks, I would say no.
Okay. Yeah. I've always been under the belief of it's better to peek at your sides for a second than stop a really good audition because you can't remember your line.
I totally agree with you. I could not agree with you more. I think it's absolutely permissible.
So in terms of script, for the bigger roles, our job as actors is to come in with the material you've given us and do the best we can with the character. And the bigger the role gets, the more involved they are in the story. So a lot of times we'll want to get copies of the entire script so we know how we fit into this piece of the puzzle. But it seems like more and more it's more difficult to actually get our hands on a script. Why do you think that is?
There's a lot of validity to confidentiality when you're doing something that may have like a really current theme and you're trying to beat everybody else to, the production line of getting something on air. So I can see it, in TV, you don't want to divulge too much of your storyline before it comes out. And I think there's probably also a little bit of paranoia around the fact that, leaks do occur.
Absolutely.
And leaks are, there isn't a casting director that hasn't experienced the backhand, of something that's leaked, even though we have done our very best to ensure that it doesn't. What I try to do, and sometimes I have to beg, and sometimes I have to ask several times, and sometimes I have to go through several channels, keep going up and up to executive producer to say, please, can I at least release a full script to the agents if they sign an NDA? Let me do that so that they know what the characters are, so that if their actor has a question, they can ask. Most of the time, I can get that done, but we all know instances where it doesn't happen. I really feel for actors because some of the casting directors are so freaking busy. They don't even have the opportunity to answer a phone call or their assistant answer a call to say, hey, I don't understand the relationship, or I don't know what's going to happen with my character. So where am I in this story?
Right.
I would certainly encourage actors to ask when they're coming in for their audition if you get something like that, where you just don't have your answers.
As casting directors and as production, we don't have that information. So it's not like you look at the actor and go, well, that was wrong. It's like, well, how can it be wrong? I didn't know. Right.
Exactly. And if I can give some hints before they come in too, or give some, updates, I'll do that as well. But I'm sure it's very frustrating for an actor because that's part of your work is to,
But
understand.
I think that's great advice to do, is do all the work that you can and then come in with the one or two questions of like, okay, something's happening. What's their relationship? Okay, great. Now I got it. And I can just add that to what I've already done.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So what are some of the biggest mistakes you see actors making in a room?
Lack of preparedness is number one. I would say that the actors do not understand how kind of advanced the game is here, so to speak, in that, you're competing against people usually in Los Angeles for a lot of the roles, even though they say, oh yes, we're going to give this to New Mexico, no problem.
Right.
But in the back of their minds, sometimes they're keeping things active in the casting in LA. So you're competing on a higher level. You have to come in off book. You have to come in prepared. You have to come in at ease. You have to come in ready to play. And I just feel like a lot of people do not reach that mark at first pass, and that's where it needs to be. Again, you can hold your sides. And then I'd say the other thing that's really bugging me, and this is going to become a very, very big issue once we're back online again because of COVID and because of everything else going on in our world,
Right.
is the online submits. I hope that we'll be doing some Zoom casting. I mean, I can see it, and that would mean, of course, that the actors have to have the proper equipment set up in their homes and their offices, wherever, to be actually taping so that it looks professional. But I would say between 1/2 and 2/3 of all the online submits I get, I would throw in the trash can.
Right.
That's how poorly they're done, either technically or they don't understand what's going on in the script. They can't self-direct, or it's just sort of a complete miss in terms of understanding the story.
Right. And so would you agree that probably the three most important things of a self-tape, other than the actor and the work they're doing, would be good lighting, good sound, and a nondescript background?
Yes. I mean, you don't do yourself any service when you're not lighting yourself properly. You're not framing yourself properly. You've got your phone down here and you're up here. All that stuff.
Like this would not be a good self-tape background.
No, and look at mine. Look at this. This is exactly the kind of stuff I see all the time in the self-tapes.
Right.
And even for those who, have the wherewithal to, put up a sheet or put up a background and have a nice clean background and clean slate, watch your camera angles.
Right.
There's so many misses. There's so many little specific things that you've got to get into your routine of doing self-taping in order to be able to not have to get kicked out of the running.
Right. You mentioned a little bit earlier about, that actors need to be aware they're auditioning against people in other markets, in Los Angeles, in New York, wherever. So how is it determined whether the character is hired locally or they bring in somebody from another place?
That, of course, is going to be determined by the team. And there are always going to be people on their list that they know they're going to bring in from LA. But
right.
Almost every production that comes to New Mexico is economically minded, and they do want to save money. And I feel like, well, if we can find someone locally and save the money there, I can give it to someplace else. So I don't care how large your budget is, you're always going to be concerned about how much you're spending.
Right.
And so they will give us a crack at a lot of roles, and we will do our very, very best, just to be absolutely giving them 110% so that we can make sure that we get those larger roles cast.
Right. And it seems like more and more that's happening.
It is.
I feel like the more that I mean, we are a talented market, and the more we show that, the more trust will be built in the relationships, and I think people will then be willing to take more chances.
Exactly. And also, a lot of it depends on who you're going to be acting opposite. If you're going to be acting opposite a star, then they want to make sure that as an actor, you've had some on-set experience acting opposite a star. So there's
Right.
no question mark about whether or not you're going to be able to perform under those circumstances.
Right. And if the star is 5'4" and I'm 6'4", it doesn't matter how talented I am. I'm probably not going to get the job unless I'm in the scene threatening the person.
Or seated the whole time.
Or seated the whole time. So there's things that are completely out of your control and have nothing to do with your talent.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Who makes the final decisions in terms of who's cast?
Most of the time, it's going to be the director and the producer, in conjunction with each other, making decisions. And the casting directors do have influence, of course. And every once in a while, you'll just get to a point in the casting where there'll be one or two roles hanging on, and the director will just look at you and say, well, who would you cast?
Right.
That's a glorious moment, but it
Absolutely.
rarely happens. It rarely happens. And we will push for people because we know, sometimes we just instinctively know that person is the right person for the role.
Right.
But it is rarely our decision. We can do our best to influence, and of course, by virtue of the fact that we put on the site people that we vetted through the process of the auditioning, those are our choices.
Right. You have your relationships and you know the actors in the community, but it's an ever-flowing, evolving community. And there's people coming in, there's people starting out. How does somebody who's not on your radar get on your radar in a respectful way? So they can start coming in and moving forward with their career.
Most actors will send me a headshot or something in the mail, and so that I actually have a solid, resume and everything right in front of me, as opposed to email. Right. I'd like to look at those headshots as well and look at their training and what they've done. So that's a good way to do it. Send something in the mail and say, hey, I've just signed with such and such agency in New Mexico, and I'm now represented locally. Right. Or I've just moved to New Mexico. I like to get little postcard updates from actors, and sometimes it will say, hey, I just booked a role on blah, blah, blah. Or I'm doing this play, and it'll be an interesting role that maybe I would like to come and see them. Email is fine. It's okay to send a resume and a headshot on email. That's okay too, just to keep me updated. But I don't need to get those kinds of things unless there's something that you want to tell me that's new. Like, in other words, yeah, I've switched agents. I just booked this role. Right.
But you don't need just checking in.
No. Just checking in is a lot of email space.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you find that social media plays any process in the casting process these days?
Well, I think only in the sense that if you have like a really high profile on social media and you're not discreet, that says to us that we need to be cautious about
Right.
about you. And we all know instances where confidentiality has been breached, where people go on set and they're posting pictures the same day, or here I am with, so-and-so, or I just had an audition for this role in this movie. All
Right.
of that is a big no-no. So people have to be very cautious about how they promote and advertise themselves on social media.
So it tends to work against you a lot more than it does for you.
Oh yeah, I think so. I absolutely do.
Now, if sometimes you'll send out a breakdown and an actor might feel like, I don't really connect to this, or I'm not comfortable with the material. If they choose to pass on an audition, and obviously not habitually, but if they choose to pass on an audition, do you hold that against them?
I'm pretty persistent about wanting to know why, because every single show I do, people pass on auditions, and I want to know specifically what's going on.
Right.
Sometimes I won't get an answer, from the agents, and I have to press. It's like, okay, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to tell me exactly why did this person pass on this role.
Right.
I want to know if it's because of the content. I obviously, if they pass because of nudity, if they pass because their religious beliefs are in direct conflict with
Right.
something, if they pass because they have family issues or health issues, or they're booked on another project, all that's completely legitimate. But I want to know, because if I feel a role is right for you as an actor and I'm inviting you in, I would hope that you would have the wherewithal to just go with it and say, okay, she sees
Right.
me in this role. I'm gonna give it a go.
I think that is a fair assessment, that, I'm giving you an opportunity. I'm at least owed an explanation of why not.
Yeah. And I'm normally fine with that. That's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of triggers that I may not perceive for people. And when
Right.
they tell me, I'm like, no problem. No problem. I'll call you in for something else.
Right.
But if it's just because, well, I don't do anything under, 5 lines anymore.
Yeah, that's a whole
That's
nother
the kind
thing.
of stuff that actually
Chaps my hide, so to speak.
yes, thank you.
Because this is out there in the public. But yeah, no, I think that's important, because I feel like some actors are really, I know from 1 or 2 experiences of people having strong religious beliefs or strong historical things that have happened to them, that they're not comfortable doing that, but have questioned whether they actually have the ability to say, no, I don't want to audition for that.
They can say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Good.
be prepared for for questions.
Absolutely. It's weirder because it's not as big a market. But do you have a certain take on marketing for actors, in terms of, because we all want to get ourselves out there and promote and this and that, and just curious your thoughts on marketing.
I feel like the strongest marketing tool a lot of people don't even utilize, and I'm going to say this, about a lot of LA actors as well. Just looking at what is my profile looking like on Actors Access. Do I have the most updated headshots? Are they headshots that are appropriate for, film, TV? Is my resume completely up to date? And most importantly, the reel. Because every once in a while we'll go on this wild search. I mean, I was looking for a lead in an indie movie last year, and I put it out to LA, and I got, I don't know, 850 submissions or something for this role. And first of all, it takes a lot of time to go through those. But one of the things I have to do, because I don't know these actors personally, is look at their reels and see what they've done. And the reels are not good. You know, a lot of them are not good. They're just not solid, really specifically showcasing your abilities to be simple, subtle, and really present and able to do the work without overacting. And so I would just highly encourage people to keep up with their reels and to have somebody, if they're not capable of assessing it themselves, somebody that can assess them for them, either their agents or another actor who is very accomplished, and say, hey, this isn't doing you any good.
Right. So would you rather see a quote bad reel or no reel?
Neither.
You have to choose, Kathy.
You have to choose.
Well, I've always been under the belief that, you know, I call it the cringe factor. If I meet somebody and I hand them my headshot or my resume or my reel and I have a little knot in my stomach because I'm just not comfortable with it.
Yeah.
My perspective is that I think it's better to say, you know what, I don't have a reel at the moment, I'm putting one together, than to give something that just puts you in a bad light.
Yeah, the bad light will knock you out, not just for that show, but for a lot of other potential casting sessions as well.
Right.
So I agree with you. I think it would be better not to have it. But I know when I go online, and even with actors that I know in this market,
right.
And I know they're not updating their reels, and it's like,
Absolutely.
I would like to see that clip from whatever show that I know that they did, so that I could show it to the director. I could say, look, this is very indicative of the current work that this actor is doing.
Right.
So I think it's really important.
And I know many people, literally the day after an episode airs, it's on their reel. That it's always as current as it possibly can, because you don't know if the next day somebody's going to ask for it.
That's right. That's right.
So I think we've covered a lot of questions. Is there anything that that you would like to tell actors and let actors know about what you do or what they do, that you think is important for them to know?
Probably nothing I haven't said before, but I'll say it again, just because I want the actors to know that I'm on their side and that I really care. And this is a really tricky world that we're in. And I'm not talking about the COVID-19 world. I'm talking about the film world. It is, it's so collaborative. There's so many people that have to be involved in every aspect of making decisions. And please know that even though I sincerely love your work, I may not be able to call you in for a certain project. It just may not be the right fit. And I'm going to do my darndest to help new actors, to help actors that I feel are really doing the work. They're doing the training. They're earnest. They're involved. They are constantly doing things to get themselves out there through all different kinds of resources. And I'm rooting for you guys. I really care, and that I want you to get opportunities and to do a good job. So please, please, please come in prepared.
Right, and keep doing the work.
Yeah, keep doing the work, and whatever uncovers or divulges itself for you during this strange time of us all being quarantined alone, hopefully it'll be something useful that you can then bring to your work.
If an actor is new and doesn't have, we all have to start somewhere. Are you receptive to going to theater, going to local film festivals to see people's work and have them introduce you to their work?
I am. I love going to theater. And it's always really nice to get comps. And most of the theaters do give industry comps to casting directors anyway, so that's a benefit. But I do love going to theater, and especially if I see it's a role that maybe is stretching you in a direction that I maybe didn't perceive.
Right.
That's really fascinating. That's great. Film festivals, yes. Hopefully, those kinds of things will be popping, when we're all back. But I do like to see actors, and I do, because we're always looking for new faces in this market, and we're always looking for talent that has skills that we, are not deep in this market, things that have to do with language, things that have to do with your ethnic diversity. It's going to be a situation where we're always out there with eyes wide open saying, that person, yeah, I could definitely see bringing them in.
Yeah. Well, Kathy, I want to thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Bob.
I wish you and everyone on your end well, and stay safe, stay healthy, and we will continue this down the line.
Absolutely, and thank you. It's lovely that you all are putting this together for the actors.
You're very welcome.
Appreciated. Thank you.